The Last Word, a weapon with a lore and history all its own within the Destiny universe, has finally made its way into our hands in Destiny 2. And as usual, the lingering perennial question arises once again. Is it good? Well, Guardians, let's find out. The Last Word is an exotic hand cannon that serves as the reward for completing the exotic questline, The Draw, which you can pick up from the Drifter in the tower. Now, we have an entire quest guide with tips and tricks here on the channel already, so I'll leave a link to that down in the description box below for those of you who have yet to get your hands on this gun. Go get it done. Now, Last Word returns in a form similar to what we had in Destiny 1, although there are some key differences. Stat-wise, the Last Word is rocking a rate of fire of 225, 78 impact, 28 range, 46 stability, 28 handling, 82 reload speed, 40 aim assist, and a recoil direction stat of 100. These stats place the Last Word as a solidly close to mid-range weapon, where it sees dominant performance with a very interesting niche. The weapon's signature perk is Fanfire, which allows the Last Word to be fired quickly and continuously. It also gains faster reload and increased accuracy on successive hipfire damage. Fanfire essentially turns the Last Word into a fully automatic weapon, which was quite the shock even back in D1. Shoot, there are Guardians out there who to this day still never realize that the Last Word is a fully automatic weapon. But indeed it is, and thankfully this time around the Fanfire perk has some additional benefits. It serves as a stacking buff similar to the Rapid Hit perk, where each successive hipfire shot will grant you additional accuracy and reload speed. This buff stacks up to 4 times and grants you a decently noticeable boost that is very much appreciated here. Be warned, however, that reloading, aiming down sights, or swapping away from the Last Word will reset the Fanfire buff entirely. But so long as you don't do any of that, there is no real timer to it, and you'll be able to keep that buff up almost indefinitely. This does mean you can extend your time with the Fanfire buff by using abilities that circumvent reloads like a Lunafaction Rift for Warlocks or a Rally Barricade to maintain the maximum boost to accuracy. But of course you'll likely not see much use of it in that form. The Last Word also has Corkscrew Rifling for slightly increased range, stability, and handling, Accurized Rounds for increased range, Hipfire Grip for increased accuracy and stability when firing from the hip, and finally, Textured Grip for greatly increased handling speed and slightly decreased overall stability. Alright, moving on, let's talk about the Last Word in PvE. Basically, you have no real reason to use this weapon in PvE. It's not the greatest weapon for ad clearance, it doesn't really deal great damage, and you'll spend most of your time reloading thanks to its high rate of fire and low overall magazine size. Though, thankfully, the reload speed is pretty fantastic on this weapon and can be further increased via the Fanfire perk, mods, and armor perks. But the overall lack of damage and ammo will have you spending more time reloading than you would be bringing justice to enemies. Of course, you can put out, a decent amount of damage fairly quickly with the hipfire and full auto, but it isn't really enough to warrant taking an exotic slot away from other, more suited weapons in PvE. Here in this environment, it's simply more style and flair than function. And the same can really be said for Gambit, where you'll simply be taking an exotic slot away from something like the Queenbreaker or the newly buffed Legend of Acreus. Additionally, in PvE, you'll probably find yourself losing out on damage when hip firing, and you'll likely have to resort to aiming down sights to more consistently land headshots, which means you'll have to deal with the Last Word's massive recoil when aiming. Hip firing is definitely the name of the game with the Last Word, as the extra stability and accuracy you get when firing from the hip makes it fairly easy to control. The recoil you get while firing full auto when aiming down sights, however, makes the weapon nigh on impossible to accurately control. And you'll rarely get to maximize the Last Word's potential when aiming, further limiting its usage in PvE. And this is where some stark differences between console and the PC platform begin to pop up here, specifically when we're talking about recoil. The Last Word definitely kicks with mouse and keyboard, but it is generally much more manageable than on a controller, where the weapon clearly seems to have more recoil than the PC equivalent experience. Seriously, it's a pretty crazy difference. Now, why this is, we don't really know, but it's definitely a thing that can make the Last Word a bit tougher to use with a controller than it is with a mouse and keyboard, so definitely pay attention to that out there. Now, in PvP, the Last Word shines. In a game environment currently swarming with shotgun rushing, the Last Word serves as an amazing answer to your friendly neighborhood Dustrock Blues ape. The Last Word deals 68 damage to the head and 51 to the body, resulting in an optimal time to kill of about 0.53 seconds, equal to where it stands in Destiny 1, and sitting as virtually the fastest killing non-one-shot weapon in the game. This means the last word is indeed capable of 3-tapping Guardians inside about 20 meters if you land all precision shots, virtually erasing any player silly enough to try and rush you down before they have a chance to even think. Granted, landing those 3 headshots will be much easier said than done, especially when hip firing. But even then, its body shot time to kill is incredibly competitive, sitting at a blazing 0.8 seconds, where it can compete with some of the best weapons in the Crucible right now. Thanks to the last word's range, it deals maximum damage up to about 20.5 meters when hip firing and about 22.5 meters when aiming down sights, giving it a decent amount of range to dominate in. Ideally though, you'll want to keep your encounters at about the 15 to 20 meter range, which is just far enough out of one-shot range for most shotguns, but not far enough that pulse rifles and Lunas or like Not Forgottens will be able to outdamage you. And believe me, when you get into the rhythm of hip firing with the last word, it feels like an absolute dream. Jumping and bobbing in and out of combat and around corners, bursting down an opponent before quickly reloading and facing off against the next. When you get a feel for the last word, the appeal for the weapon becomes readily apparent, and it serves as a really powerful close to mid-range option to burn through opponents. And also, don't be afraid to ADS every now and again when you need to. Yeah, the recoil is crazy, but it's basically completely vertical, so you can learn to work with it. And it'll serve as a great way to kind of bridge some shots when you need to land maybe an extra hit on an opponent who's a little bit farther away. ADSing might help you out in some of those situations. So the last word is definitely still good on that front. But of course, it isn't without its problems. There is definitely some jank there too. Often enough, I notice that when firing full auto, some shots, whether I'm ADSing or not, will just straight up vanish into the ether. There will definitely be occasions when you're sure, and I mean you are absolutely 100% sure, that you landed a series of shots on a target, yet only like the first shot or 2 will register. It's really weird sometimes, although this does seem to happen less if you tap fire the weapon rather than holding the trigger, which I guess can also help you keep on target at longer ranges, but is frustrating nonetheless, and is definitely going to cost you a gunfight or 2. Also, I don't really know what it is, but I swear that since the update bringing the last word came out, I have noticed some particularly bad connections in the Crucible on PC as of late, where things have usually been pretty smooth, so maybe internet quality is a factor here. If you were to ask me, the Spectre of Bloom definitely still seems to be a factor here with the last word, so it would be wise to expect some inconsistency every now and then. Basically, the last word provides a very powerful niche. It's a close to mid-range weapon that can absolutely shred if you get a handle on the recoil pattern and hip firing. Just like in D1, it pairs up beautifully with a sniper rifle or a scout rifle to cover long-range gunfights and is a very fun weapon to use. If you're a controller or console player, the recoil is definitely going to be more difficult to deal with, no doubt about that. Which of course can be a bit of a tough sell for players when we have some of those fantastic 180 RPM hand cannon options out there right now, stuff like Luna's Howl, stuff like Not Forgotten, which are weapons that pair up so perfectly and so consistently with controllers right now. But believe me, the last word in my opinion more than proves itself as a fun, powerful, and yes, even reliable option for the PvP landscape. I absolutely love this weapon. And I hope Guardians out there enjoy being rootin' tootin' cowboy shooting Guardians just as much as I do. But alright, that is it for my review of the Last Word Exotic Hand Cannon. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video or found it informative at all, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. I've been waiting a long time for this one and I'm happy to finally get my hands on it. But alright, that's it for me. As always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians, stay frosty.